Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be another weekly reading vlog. It is Monday, August 1st. It's a little crazy that it's already August. It feels like this year has just been going very fast. August is usually a pretty good month for me. It starts off really strong with two of my siblings' birthdays, and then, you know, you start seeing like Halloween stuff in stores. I of course am not a summer person. After my birthday at the end of June, I pretty much transition into fall mode and just kind of ignore summer because I just not a fan of summer or the heat or anything. So I feel like with each month that gets closer to actual October, even though I've been kind of like getting in the spooky mindset since July, I feel like every single month it becomes more and more socially acceptable to start buying Halloween decorations and just getting really into the spirit. One of my most anticipated releases comes out at the end of this month, Babel by R.F. Kuang. So yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be just like a good reading month. I'm putting that out into the universe just because I'm also like not in a slump, but I'm not in a slump right now. Just because I feel like the last couple of books that I've tried to pick up, Summerween went really well for me. That was my last vlog. And then since then I feel like I've picked up a bunch of books and I've like kind of did like almost like a try a chapter tag by accident because I've been reading like a chapter or two of a book, putting it down, picking up another book. Like I just can't figure out what I want to read. So reading vlog, hopefully that'll give me some more direction, so that I'll be like more motivated to finish a book, because it's not that I don't want to read, it's just I can't narrow it down. I have a lot of library books checked out right now, and I have like a whole shelf on like a separate bookshelf than these behind me where I keep my library loans, and it is full. So that means that I need to read them and make some room on that shelf before I check anything else out. So that is going to be my priority this week. Just a quick little reading update from if you saw the end of my Summerween vlog. I still was very much in the middle of a couple books. So first off, I'm DNFing this, which kind of was a shock to me. Maybe a shock if you watch Summerween, because I was really enjoying this at the beginning. And also kind of a little bummed because I have been pretty much not buying any books this year for the most part and just checking them out from the library. But this was one where I was confident. It was one of my most anticipated releases of last year, and so I bought it physically, which kind of stings, that I did not enjoy this, and I got like 150 pages in and I finally just kind of decided to DNF it, and I probably won't be picking it back up, which is frustrating because I've seen nothing but good reviews about this one. It's essentially like the pitch for this apparently is Silence of the Lambs set in a fantasy world. So yeah, definitely a premise that I was super intrigued by and was really enjoying. However, just like the world building, a lot of it, like the world customs and the world itself, I felt like just had some elements that I just really didn't like, and I really felt like the tone of them, I didn't think they would be challenged. So I don't mind reading about oppressive world systems or like political systems that are oppressive if they're challenged in a fantasy. But this one, I just felt like certain things about the world, I didn't really think that they were ever going to be like addressed. But just in this world, like our main character, she is essentially like a cop. I mean, she's the Clarice Starling of the story, if you're still like going with the Silence of the Lambs metaphor, law enforcement. And in this world, it is illegal to defile your body. So self-mutilation is illegal in this world, and that includes piercings or tattoos, like any body modification like that. And there is like scenes in here where our main character like enforces that and like forces someone to take out a facial piercing. Like she says she feels bad, but that's just like the law. And so I don't really know, and this is like a long series, and our main character doesn't really seem like she is the type to start revolution, and just like a lot of the way certain things like that were portrayed, I'm like, I don't really want to read this. And that might be very personal, it might be addressed, but just with the way I was reading it, it didn't feel like it was. And honestly, that's something that I don't really have any patience to read from, because I have had people be very shitty to me in terms of just like my hair color or my nose piercing or tattoos. Like I have had people just be very shitty to me, especially since moving down south. Like I've had people tell me like over and over again that I would look prettier with my natural hair color, or that like they don't understand why I got a nose piercing, or like talk to other people in front of me about how disgusting they think nose piercings are. So just like personally, that's just something that's like not necessarily a trigger, because I feel like in another world where it felt like it was being challenged and was clearly portrayed as like a wrong thing to control, then I wouldn't mind it as much. But just like I just don't have any tolerance for that. It's something that like I'm a very confident adult. I don't care. It doesn't like affect me when people say these things in like a self-confidence way where I don't like feel nice about myself, but like it's annoying to have to deal with, because that's just like a shitty thing. I was taught as a kid that like, you know, you shouldn't comment on people's appearance unless it's like spinach in their teeth or like their tags. Like it's something that you can fix really quickly and it's not like about the person. You shouldn't comment on it. So yeah, just like a little tangent. So I'm DNFing this. Probably I'm getting rid of my copy. I might pick it up. I might try and pick it up later at like a library or something if I change my mind or a lot of people continue to read this and love it, because I'm not seeing it. I'm not getting the hype around this one, so DNF. And then the other book that I didn't finish during Summerween was The Apparitionist, which is a non-fiction about spirit photography and the spiritualism movement and that history of spirit photographs and the man who captured Lincoln's ghost on film. So I am really enjoying this one. It is kind of more of like a dense, very factual nonfiction as opposed to like a more colloquial pop science nonfiction. So I am enjoying it. It's just like a slow going read. So I will be continuing to read this week. And then the two library books that I've picked out that I am going to try and read, first of all, is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. It kind of gives me Annihilation vibes. Apparently like our main character, her wife went on a expedition under the sea in a submarine. Something happened, and then her wife comes back unexpectedly when they thought the submarine was lost, I believe, but her wife is very different now. So this is kind of like a horror that gives me Annihilation vibes a little bit. I hate this cover. There's another cover that I think is absolutely gorgeous, and this one does not give me the same vibes as the other one, which is unfortunate, but don't judge a book by its cover. I am excited for this. This is one I have read the first chapter and I'm excited to read it. So we'll be reading this week. And then another book that I have to get to because someone else is on hold for it would be The Force of Such Beauty by Barbara Bourland. And this says like if my year of rest and relaxation was about Grace Kelly. So a little bit out of my comfort zone. It's supposed to be like a commentary on this is like taking place a woman in like the 2000s marrying into royalty. So I'm very intrigued by that. It's supposed to be kind of examining the ways in which such like societal titles and things like that kind of still control women. I believe it's like kind of like thrown in, especially with like the My Year of Rest and Relaxation, with like those sad girl books that are going around, which I've tried a lot of those this year and I've either really hated them or really loved them. So not really sure how I'm gonna feel about this one. I'm going to feel completely fine either way if I like finish it and really enjoy it, or if I have to DNF really fast. But someone is on hold for me at the library after this one, so I do have to get to this week as well. So those are my reading plans, hopefully trying to get through a lot of library books. I'm excited. I ended July with some great books, potentially some of my favorite books of the year. So hopefully we'll have some winners this week as well, or if not, at least some good book discussions and me kind of culling my library book collection a little bit, being able to return some of those. So I just have one shelf instead of a shelf and then like a little pile next to it, which is what I have now. I'd like for them to all be able to fit on my shelf. So that is my plans. That is the end of this update, and I will talk to you all in an update later. So this is like the library shelf that I was talking about that is just completely full Right now, I'd like there to be no books stacked anywhere and just have them all fit on one shelf. Unfortunately, Our Wives Under the Sea, I am halfway through it and it is due today and someone is on hold for it now, so I am gonna have to return it and get back to it. Unfortunately, I can't find, I've got 2 libraries on Libby and neither of them have the book in ebook or audiobook, so I'm just gonna have to return this and then get back on the holds list for it, unfortunately. So yeah, I'll try during my lunch break to kind of power through this, but unfortunately I'm gonna have to return it and wait for it again. So I've got a lot more books that I'm gonna have to try and get through. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to pick up next. I feel like if I pick up like one of the huge ones, it'll be easier to narrow this shelf down and to condense it a little bit more, but we'll see. So it is Tuesday. Unfortunately, I did not finish Our Wives Under the Sea before I had to return it. So I did put myself back on the holds list for it. So best case scenario, I should be getting that in about 2 weeks, but I was enjoying it. And I am kind of bummed that I didn't finish it. It's barely 200 pages long. So yeah, I was hoping to finish it just because I feel like that's one where it is so short that I didn't want to take a long period of time in between reading it. But I don't want to be the asshole that never returns my library holds on time, because I've been on the other end of that and it is so annoying when you know that you are next in line and you know how long like the library lets you have books, 2 weeks, and the person ahead of you in line is just not returning it. So I did return it when it was due. I'm very eager to get it again and finish it because I had a feeling that I was really going to enjoy it. It was slower paced, which was interesting for such a short book. And I was just getting to like the horror elements of it. So put a pin on that. But the next book that I'm definitely picking up, because I don't want that to happen again, is The Force of Such Beauty by Barbara Bourland. This one, I do have someone else waiting in line behind me. And I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this, but the only person that I follow on Instagram that I've seen read this has said it's one of her favorite books all year. So I'm excited to check it out. Definitely a little bit different than what I have been reading. I've really been into horror for like the past week or so, past 2 weeks, but yeah, don't have anything to say about it because I haven't started it, but I plan on picking it up tonight, starting it, and then next update I should have some more information, some more details about the book, because I'm pretty much going in blind. But like I think I mentioned before, it says if this was my year of rest and relaxation, that was written about Grace Kelly. So yeah, that's the kind of vibe. I still don't really know what that really means until I dive into it some more, but I'm excited. I'm gonna go get to reading this and I will check back in with you all later. is Friday night, finally the weekend, and of course my big weekend plans, my big Friday night plans are reading. I really have not been reading a lot this week. I just haven't had a lot of spare time to sit down and read, so I am excited to finish this weekend. I need to, because it needs to go back to the library at the end of this weekend, so need to finish this. I've got a lot more time, free time to read on the weekends, so that should be good. I am enjoying this. I'm about a fourth of the way through this one, and it is very interesting. I would be interested, I think, in checking out this author's other works as well. This is this author's third novel. I had never heard of Barbara Bourland before as an author, probably because it does kind of seem like she does write in like the literary fiction sphere, and I'm definitely more of like a high fantasy or horror reader, so this is definitely not my usual read, but it is very interesting. Essentially, we're following a young woman named Caroline. She has grown up in post-apartheid South Africa, and she dropped out of school in about 9th grade to become a runner. She was exceptionally talented, exceptionally young, in the Olympics, and she was going to have like a very great and storied career. She did win one major race, I think, at the Olympics. I'm not too sure. I'm not in like the running sphere, so that's not really the most clear for me, but she did set like a world record, and she was about to participate in the Olympics, and she had an accident that derailed her career, realized that it was career ending for her, so she had to very quickly pivot again at a very young age. Now she's like 22, 23. She only has the education of a 9th grader because she quit education, like she put that on the line to become a famous athlete, and now she feels very betrayed that her body has just completely shut down on her. That was like the only thing that she felt like she was good at, and the only thing that she felt like she really had like of worth to give to the world was that she was really good at running. So she has to rediscover herself, her whole entire life course. Very early on, she meets a prince and they fall in love. Now, you learn from the prologue that she has married this prince and is now a princess, and it is not all that it seems to be. A little blurb on the dust jacket I feel like summarizes her feelings really well about this. So that's: when he gave me a yellow diamond ring and sailed me into this port, when he locked a collar of pearls around my neck, led me down a balustrade like a dog on a leash, and we waved to 10,000 people. Even when he shut the door on me for the first time, throughout all of it, this had looked like a gift. This life had looked so special, I would have done anything to keep it. Now I would give anything to leave. So prologue, we see our main character Caroline a lot older, and she's married into royalty, and really has discovered it is not for her. And then we flash back to when she has this career-ending injury. Now, based on the synopsis of this book, I definitely expected it to be a lot more about like Caroline in the prologue. I didn't expect to have this much what I thought was backstory based on the synopsis, on the dust jacket, on Goodreads, Storygraph, all of that. Where I am a quarter of the story in, she's just met the prince that is going to be her husband, so I definitely think that's very interesting. I would say throughout it, I think the most interesting thing so far is Caroline talking about her very, very complex relationship with her body that she has, especially being in the position where she was, where her career was her body had a specific purpose. She felt like all she was good at was running, and then very quickly she really had a whole completely different relationship with her body and had to really relearn that. So I think that discussion is really interesting, and I think it's going to keep progressing, talking about her different relationships to her body and how the world interacts with her body as well. Just because as she's finding herself, as she's not an athlete anymore, someone who is trained, really primed their body for Olympic athleteship, looks a lot different than just a normal person, especially one now that she's had this injury and is on the rehab and can't work out anymore, has a very different body. So relearning that and realizing like what different place she has in society now. There's another quote that I thought was like really, really impactful, was, "I learned that the world was made from men for men, that men controlled the world, and further, that their desire for my attention was the only leverage I possessed. I could have learned other things, I suppose, but that would have required an education." So this is very interesting. It has a lot to say. I will say it's not like exactly a page turner. I feel like a lot of the plot, you know what's going to happen, and it's more of like an internal journey for the characters. So I mean, I could be wrong, but at least a fourth of the way into this, it is very much internal as opposed to external, and it's not like a thriller or like, you know, like a very thrilling story. I feel like this one is one where I finish a chapter and I enjoy it, but I can put it down and move on to something else. It's not something where I'm like racing to get to every chapter, but I don't really think that's like the type of story that it is. But speaking of thrillers, I do have another book that I need to read this weekend because I have to return it to the library on Monday, and that would be The It Girl by Ruth Ware. So this is going to be paced differently than The Force of Such Beauty. I've really enjoyed things from Ruth Ware in the past. I did not pick up her most recent just because I had heard that was more of a mystery, less of a thriller, and like I think an Agatha Christie retelling, and that just like wasn't something that really interested me as much as other books that she had written. I really enjoyed The Turn of the Key, and I also really enjoyed The Death of Mrs. Westaway. This one I am intrigued about. It kind of reminded me a little bit, just of the basic synopsis, because I went into this, I want to go into this pretty blind, but of In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. That kind of gave me the same vibes of like a group of college friends. One is murdered, and who got put away from the murder is not exactly who murdered her. I think, again, thrillers, I think they're the best when you go in pretty blind other than like one sentence synopsis. So I do have to read that this weekend as well. So two pretty hefty books, and yeah, that's my weekend plans. Thrilling Friday night here, but I'm going to go read The Force of Such Beauty some more, and I will talk to you all in the morning. So I did finish one of the two books that I was supposed to finish today before work. Unfortunately, it was okay. So I did finish The Force of Such Beauty by Barbara Bourland, and I did enjoy it. Definitely not my usual, and I just think because this was a book that had a lot to say, the writing was very good, very intense at times, just in terms of the societal problems and just like society in general that it was talking about. However, I do feel like the prologue for this one really gave you the tone for the book as well as what was going to happen. So, you know, nothing was really a surprise. It was just like a character study. And while I do normally like character-driven books, this just was very bleak, which was what I was guessing going into it. I would say for trigger warnings for this one, definitely if you have any sort of triggers related to domestic violence or any sort of like coercion or abuse, whether that be physical, mental, just like any sort of like power dynamic in a relationship, I probably would skip this one. Our main character just kind of goes from one situation to another where she is surrounded by people who don't have her best interest in mind, and that can just be very, very hard at times to read. So I did enjoy this. This was definitely one where I felt like I could read a chapter, put it down, move to something else, and then pick it back up, just because of the pacing, the tone of it. Definitely wasn't one where it's like, I wonder what's going to happen next. You kind of know what's going to happen next in the story, but I did think it was very well written, very intriguingly written, and there were a lot of quotes in here that I read it and I was like, wow, yes, that exactly. I would say the most fascinating part, and the part to me that was most impactful, was talking about motherhood and just talking about parenthood in general, how the expectations are so different, and unfortunately, like societally, it's a different experience for men and for women. Usually women are expected to kind of give everything up still, and just make their whole identity kind of motherhood and have that be your thing, whereas men still get to keep themselves and then be a father, whereas women are kind of expected still to be a mother first before they're their own person, which fascinatingly, I did think it coincided. I saw on Facebook, I rarely go on Facebook anymore, but I do occasionally check it to check in with like older family members, different family members that like don't have any other forms of social media. It's easy to get connected, keep connected, things like that. So when I was checking it this weekend, I saw, and again, kind of paraphrasing since I really just saw it passing by and I ended up unfriending this person anyway. It was someone from college, but they were talking about how apparently like the Miss USA or Miss America, something like that, the pageant finally opened it up to, I think, married women and mothers maybe. Didn't see, but she and a lot of people were like talking about how that was ridiculous to do that because it's such like a time-intensive commitment, and someone who is married or someone who has kids, like that's unfair to their family for the mom to balance that, for the wife to balance that, and how if you are participating in a pageant that you can't give 100% of yourself to both things. It's sad in a way where obviously like there's so much that goes into a pageant. I think there are definitely some things that we need to change about that industry, but there is so much, like those women work so hard, and there is like a lot of different events and philanthropies and speeches, like it is a time commitment. But I think it's appalling that we still think that there's a lot of people just based on this person's post and then going to the original post and looking through the comments, people just not like, you can't have it all. As a woman still, I feel like a lot of people still kind of feel that way, and it's really ridiculous that like you wouldn't have like a familial structure. Like it would be hard and it would not be obtainable for everyone, but to just not even say like, oh, you know, different families can work out what would work for them, just nope, you gotta give up all your dreams and be a mom first. And I understand, like I haven't had kids, so you know, I don't think my opinion is going to change much on this, because I think it's, I mean, what this book was saying about that, even though it's not going to be like my favorite read of the year or anything, was so true about how parenthood as a mother, you know, if you have the pregnancy yourself and it's such a change for you and you're expected to give up so much and you're expected to be a mom, whereas, you know, we still see people just with fatherhood acting like it's just glorified babysitting, and not being like an equal partner. So just kind of just interesting tangent, because this was written, it's supposed to take place in the 2000s, from like 99 to 2007. You'd hope that some things that are talked about in here would not be as prevalent in society today, but it is. And I don't know the solution to that, but societally it's still, you know, very much an inequality with how we view parenthood and how we view giving up your own personhood to be a parent, and just kind of expected to be okay with that and not even having to grieve like the person you once were before having kids. I thought that was very fascinating, because obviously, good case scenario, when you have kids, your life will change because you will care for those kids, but just the expectations of giving up your hobbies to be a good mom is different than giving up like your hobbies and your work to be a good father. So yeah, kind of a downer. I keep trying to try out these very like hyped literary fiction books, just because I've just never been a literary fiction person, and I think that unless they have like unless they're like a literary horror or a literary fantasy or a literary some other type of like speculative genre, I don't think it's going to be for me. But yeah, so this book, not for me, but it definitely had some interesting conversations. And then I am unfortunately returning the It Girl. I have to return it back at the library today. So yeah, I had an opportunity to start it yesterday, but I wanted to finish The Force of Such Beauty, and then I placed a hold for this for the audiobook on Libby. It's going to be several months, but I didn't want what happened to Our Wives Under the Sea to happen for this one, where I would start it, be in the middle of it, and then have to return it today anyway. So I have not started this. I do have to return it, kind of a bummer, but it'll be like a nice happy surprise when in a couple months time I'm finally at the front of the list for my library's audiobook copy of this, and then I'll just listen to it then, because I didn't actually end up reading as much as I normally do this weekend. Just haven't really been, I think kind of, my books were pushing me into a slump because I definitely wanted to prioritize library books, but just being such a mood reader, sometimes I just want to read a completely random book than what I was anticipating, and I wasn't allowing myself to do that until yesterday. So I did pick up a book. I actually own this one. I've been meaning to get to it for quite some time now, and this is the sequel to one of my favorite books of last year, The Bone Shard Daughter. This is The Bone Shard Emperor by Andrea Stewart. This is the second in a fantasy trilogy, and I was feeling some fantasy. I just really was feeling some fantasy escapism, and just continuing on with a series. I just really wanted to be in like a very extensive fantasy world, so I ended up picking this one up. I don't think the third one comes out until next year, but ever since the first one, I've just been meaning to pick this up, and I haven't gotten to it as soon as I would have liked. So I'm not very far in this one. It is quite a chunky fantasy. I think I'm only on like a page 100 of something, and I think this has about 500 pages or so, but I'm really enjoying this one. It is high fantasy, and it is about an empire that is ruled by emperors with bone shard magic, where essentially they take a piece of bone from every single citizen's skull and use those bone pieces to create magic, and that takes a toll on the citizens. So there is lots of discussions in here about how to rule, if there's a way to ethically rule and use this magic when it drains other people of their life, essentially. You get bone shard sickness if your piece of bone is being used by the emperor for the magic. So there's like a rebellion going on, there's some transfers of powers going on, and in this second book there's also like an outside threat as well, kind of converging. So very political with a very interesting magic system. Can't say too much else with this being the second book in a series, but I'm really glad that I finally picked this one up because it has been too long since I read the first book, so I'm glad that I am reading this. But that is pretty much my update. I do have to go into work in about an hour or so, so I do anticipate probably picking up another library book as well, just to keep trying to whittle my list down a little bit, but definitely I'm going to be reading this throughout the week. I do have to wrap up this vlog soon, but I will let you know if I manage to pick up another book by the time this vlog ends. But that's going to be it for this update, and I will talk to you all later. Alright, it is time to wrap up this vlog. I didn't get like as much reading done as I thought I would in this vlog, just because some of the books that I wanted to read, I did have to end up returning to the library. Unfortunately, I do have them back on hold. They Drown Our Daughters, I was like halfway through, and then The It Girl by Ruth Ware, I just didn't even start because I didn't want another situation like We Drown Our Daughters. So both of those I will be getting to whenever I get them next through my library. So unfortunately, kind of failed in that regard to try and read all of these books before they were due. But I did read The Force of Such Beauty by Bourland, and I really thought that was good for me to kind of expand the types of books that I normally read. It was very much out of my comfort zone, and I am ending this weekly vlog with two books that I am in the middle of, but I am really enjoying both of them, and they are very different. One fiction and one nonfiction. So nonfiction, don't worry, is actually a library book. I know I said that I was going to read all library books this week, and then I ended up picking up a book that I actually actually owned, but this is a library book and it's called Nightmare Fuel. It's by Nina Neseth and it's the science of horror films, and I'm about 40%, 30 to 40% of the way through this one. This is very fascinating. I am definitely a big horror person. I love horror, whether it's books or movies, and this is a horror nonfiction that goes into like why we love horror movies, and like the science behind that, the science behind loving horror, behind what happens when you watch horror, like the parts of your brain that are working when someone watches horror, why different types of horror work for different people. It also kind of dives very briefly into like horror history, which I'm really fascinated in as well, where like different cultural and societal fears of like the decade really impact horror, and how some horror movies based on societal fears that we maybe don't have anymore don't hold up as well as other horror movie classics. Definitely would be a great nonfiction, I feel like, for fall. I would say maybe don't go into this unless you've watched like a bunch of the big name horror movies, like the ones that I feel like even if you don't watch horror you know about, or if you've heard about them and just don't care, because this does use like specific examples from movies. Like just off the top of my head, it does use and talk about at length different scares and things that happen in the movies like Scream or Halloween, and goes through what happens. So spoilers for those movies, if you haven't seen them, just keep an eye out that this does, you know, use examples from movies to talk about like the fear phenomenon and different things about horror movies, like jump scares and endings and tropes and stuff. So either make sure you've watched the classics, or just, you know, get good at skimming, I guess, or just know there are going to be like slight spoilers. It's not really like full synopses for any of these movies, but it definitely goes over just certain iconic scenes, kind of beat for beat, explaining them through like a scientific horror lens. So just keep that in mind, but I'm enjoying it. I'm having a really good time. It's definitely like a very easy breezy nonfiction, at least for me, definitely written like a love letter to the horror genre, and I love the horror genre. I love horror movies, so this is a whole lot of fun for me to read. And then the other book that I'm currently reading is The Bone-Shard Emperor by Andrea Stewart, second book in a really wonderful fantasy series. I am really enjoying this one so far. I can't say a lot about it. I feel like I already kind of said enough about it in a previous clip in this vlog, because it is the second book in a series, but I'm really fascinated by the way different things are playing out, different political parties and movements and just different key players. I think it's really fascinating. The politics in here are really fascinating. I feel like it's very, very multifaceted in terms of like different power structures, different groups and different political movements wanting different governances or rules of law for this empire, and kind of going about the pros and cons of them, and also how maybe some really altruistic people aren't as altruistic as they seem. So lots of political machinations going on in here, as well as just this one really expands upon the world and like a greater threat to this empire, as opposed to like the first one was very internal. We're starting to see sort of an external threat in this book. So yes, I'm really enjoying this one. I'm about 50% of the way through. It's very hefty, so I'll be continuing on reading both of the books that I just mentioned in my next vlog, but that's pretty much all I have for the update. Kind of, I don't really know, I guess not all vlogs need to have like a set purpose, even though I kind of set my purpose to read like a ton of library books. I did, you know, read some of them, and I did clear off some of them because I just had to return them. So my shelf that I'm looking at is now, I can fit all the books onto one shelf, even though I did have to return some without reading them. But I guess technically either way, I kind of accomplished my little mini goal. I think at this point now, this vlog has been going on for a little over a week, so I'm not entirely too sure how much footage is going to be in here, how long or short this vlog is, but nevertheless, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel for more content, stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!